We're live on Materials Exchange MX Broadcasting Network with Lunch with Lumberman. Greg Riley, Matt Beamer will be streaming in a second here. He is just getting makeup put on backstage, and he should be here. They're putting some of that. I think he's getting the powder job right now.
He gets makeup. That's nice.
Yeah,
That's nice.
He does get makeup. So this is our 20th something, getting close to 30.
You can figure out what the exact number is, Ash.
Yeah, I can, but I like talking I'm like an old lumber wholesaler where it could actually be our 21st episode, but I want to say 29.
So
but can I get a firm on that?
So did you watch Peyton and Eli on Monday night on the side screen?
I did not. But first of all, Peyton was they were doing the comments, eh?
Yeah.
Why are we trading lumber the old-fashioned way when we can be on these things, doing things digitally, and putting comments up in the bleep blooper?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, had texts coming in from Archie was texting in. The guests. We need to figure out how we can have some guests on our show on a weekly basis. Bring a little color commentary in.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. So over in the comments section, if you want to put up where you're from, hey, back from Hong Kong again. That's kind of like back from Hong Kong. I love it. So I got a lot of feedback. So did you from our last few shows. Pretty good feedback. So we have a lot of big participants.
I haven't gotten any. I didn't get any hate mail, which is good. That was good.
I'll take all that for you.
Exactly.
But hey, we're trying to empower, educate, bring transparency to a lumber market that really has got
is none of those things.
Yes. It was funny. I was just talking to a guy this morning he goes, you know what, Ash? He goes, I'm worn out of this volatility. It's like 1 minute something happens and he goes, I can't run a company like this with this vol. He goes, I buy something, it's $100 up, it's $100 down. It was frustrated, right? And people like to hear the information coming out a lot less than they want to hear, hey, you need to buy something right now because I just loaded up on a bunch of stuff and the market's going up $600 again. Hey, Matt, you look good, man.
I had physical therapy this morning, buddy. I'm in shape.
How was it? Good?
They got me riding a bicycle with a fan. So self-powered.
The old Schwinn sideline bike? Yeah.
Yeah, they call it an Aerodyne or something. It's actually a pretty good workout, believe it or not.
They got you doing the sprints and then go as fast as you can for 2 minutes.
No.
That's intense.
Before you got on, Matt, I was saying I got some good feedback. So I had a guy call from a big publicly traded company after our call on last Wednesday and say, hey, a couple of my VPs had asked me about what you guys are doing at MX and all that. So, and he said he has a lot of his younger people watching it. A lot of people watch it, and they get good information about it. I'm surprised you haven't been canceled yet, Matt. You're all good so far.
Yeah, I'm fine, buddy. We're not going into the PC political stuff too deeply, so
no, we're not.
Hard to get canceled when you don't say anything.
So I saw you came through Restream, Nick. All right, well, cool. Everybody say where you're from. Thanks for being on the show. We a lot went on from last week. It was really interesting, and we'll kind of highlight this. And I don't think we had anything to do with it, but we had talked about this whole thing. We talked about. Did anybody hear about what West Fraser actually announced last Wednesday? And we chatted about it. Nobody actually knew. And then that night after our call, by coincidence, big coincidence, they came out with an announcement, right?
Yeah.
So what the industry was saying the week before was, hey, did you hear West Fraser is taking 30% production off? And I saw email chains from 3 different people with no real information. So the report came out. I read it. Greg, you read it. What did you read into it?
Well, I can read what it said. It said that they had reduced production between 5 and 10% in July and August because of forest fires, blah, blah, this, that, and the other thing. There was a announcement of what they had done. There is no announcement as to what they are going to do officially that I've been able to find.
But was this what they were going to do that wasn't going to be announced of what they did then?
Exactly. Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I gotta check my college degree and make sure it still works.
You said you were gonna, but you didn't. Yeah.
No, it's very confusing because what was blown through the industry about a 30% curtailment, the actual announcement wasn't that. Are we waiting on something else?
Right. Well, so here and just as taking that the next step, something really interesting, Ash, on my LinkedIn feed today, I had a solicitation from a law firm that is going, essentially going to file class action lawsuit for manipulation of prices.
Yeah, that's been floating around on LinkedIn for 2 weeks now.
Has it? Okay. I'm just 2 weeks behind. That's all.
That's okay. That usually pops up along with the Viagra commercials.
I haven't gotten any of those.
So no, I saw that too. It was interesting. And here's what I did when I saw it. I'm like, yeah, I'm not touching that at all. Right.
Yeah.
I read that. I'm like, it was odd. It's popped up on LinkedIn a bunch of times. I thought it was strange. So,
well, I mean, I just think here's what we've talked about. We've been talking for a long time about, hey, price transparency, and how, really when we look at our market, part of the challenge that all of the players have is that the fact is the market's highly manipulated. It really is. It is manipulated. Now,
so in my head, I'm trying to think how I respond to this because
But I mean, remember back, when was it, in the 90s when there was class action against the OSB producers because of manipulation of price, and there ended up being a fairly large settlement. I just think the industry as a whole would be far better off to focus on how do we do a better job of being honest and transparent in terms of the pricing of our product.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Did I just say that?
Yeah, I got off a phone call with a guy before we got on, and he was more venting about how he calls people and all of a sudden they had no order file, then they got a 4-week order file and prices are up $100 on stuff, and people are calling him telling him he has to buy, and he's like, it's hard to run a business when there's so much volatility in the market. I know volatility is part of the game we've always been in, but it's getting a little bit silly at this point.
And I think that's when people talk about, hey, I'm just so tired of the high level of volatility. Then
So anyway, let's go back to the market from last week. Seemed to be one thing that I think I can say, and I don't ever want to say anything's for certain, but what I've been hearing from certain people, some of the home centers that have been out of the market for, let's say, 2 to 3 months, finally, the last few weeks have had one of the best pulls in the previous 3 months on items. Can we agree that may be the case?
And we talked about it starting in like late August, that we were starting to see that was going to happen, and we postulated that it would accelerate once we got past Labor Day.
Okay, so I'll ask a question then that somebody on LinkedIn and a few other things put on. Does that mean that all this business is going to? So this person was postulating that because prices were low, and business was starting to pick up at the home centers again, all this business is going to roll back in that people have been waiting for to buy that they didn't buy because of high prices. And although I'll agree to that to a certain extent, from what I see, people that are going to buy a home project are going to buy it no matter what, most of the cases, right?
We saw a lot of projects, both, home improvement projects and, certainly multifamily projects that in the second quarter they were delayed. And, some of those have started, and Matt and I both saw a big, as we started lowering the numbers in August, we started seeing a big additional demand for that. And Matt, you can maybe confirm, it's continued here this last week or two. I mean, I've got as many projects in front of me now as I ever have.
Yeah, and I think that there is a governor on the speed of which we can move forward, right? So what we ran into and what we've talked about here for the last 3 or 4 months is other things that aren't lumber related, like labor shortages or other materials like doors and windows or concrete or vinyl or copper pipe or bathtubs or air conditioning units, whatever it could be. There are things outside of the lumber business that are going to have an impact on the speed with which we can move lumber through the system, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's actually it's a double-edged sword. It's a good thing and a bad thing. The good part of it is that it creates kind of a stable supply and demand oriented type market where there's a lot of pent up demand underneath everything. But there's a governor, right? There's like, okay, speed limit's 55 and you can't go past 60, right? That's great because we were trying to go 120 back in March, April, May, and that wasn't working very well. And so then we had the highest price of all time, followed by the biggest sell-off of all time, right? So now we're kind of in a normal give and take market where mills have things that customers want, and then the customers pay a little bit more for the things that they want. And then there's still some items out there that mills have trouble moving and customers can come in and bid on. Well, that is the epitome of the typical market that you and I and Greg have always known, right? Yeah. Where there's always a little bit of give and take between the buyers and the sellers. And we move in a fairly narrow range in $100, maybe $150 worth of swing of prices seasonally. And that's where we are now. And it appears as though we're going to stay in that kind of a market for a while, because of these, I guess, mitigating factors that are keeping a lid on the speed with which lumber can move. And then the other thing is you're going into the fall and winter. Fall's a really good time for people to do home projects. And it's the busiest time of the year for that, actually, believe it or not. A lot of people think it's springtime, but it's not. It's the fall. Yeah. And so I'll put that out there. Those are my thoughts on this stuff.
Matt, you got a great point, which kind of I've used it a bunch of times since our last call. You said the market was kind of normalizing finally, which, my God, if it just normalizes and just trades in a regular in some type of range that doesn't move 150, $200 $1,000, but trends nicely. I think
that's a day or a week, you mean?
A day, a week, I don't know. I'm just talking about smoothing out a little bit. Does it still feel that way to you, Matt? That maybe things are kind of.
It does. I mean, there was a lot of panicky people in March, April, May, even June that were, especially the developers and the job owner type people, the guys that wanted to get a quote on this apartment job that they want to start in 2 months. That type of business was really nervous, for most of the first half of the year. They didn't know how they were going to get their lumber. They didn't know how they were going to get it and pay for it, how much it was going to cost them. Like, they just had so much uncertainty about the future of their building project that they were all sitting there really, really nervous. And now that the market has come down so far and back into a normal range of pricing across a wide swath of different items, I'm not just talking about lumber. I mean, OSB and plywood have reset prices also, and boards have come down. I mean, basically the entire system is kind of readjusted into a normal range. They're a lot more back to their normal way of procuring things, right? They're putting bids out. They're taking their time. They're coming up with creative ideas. If one product goes up a little bit, like I had a guy trying to figure out how to replace inch and an eighth TNG plywood because it was over $1,000 a thousand. So he was talking about using 2x12 number 3, stuff like that. So these are the kind of conversations that I'm used to having for long periods of time. And people have always looked for substitute products in this business to save a little bit of money here and there.
Yeah,
and the guys actually have a little bit of time to think about it, whereas previously nobody had time. Everybody was just reacting. They were like, "Oh my gosh, I got to do this, I got to do that," And so that's where what's changed.
It's like you're in the fourth quarter of a game and everybody's worn out and you're making that drive down the field and you got to do something different. It's hard to make that decision like at that point to change things, right? To change your game plan, and people had to on some certain things. So James just brought up a good point. I think Matt may be making a major point. Pent up demand continues to be built due to the other supply constraints. When the supply chain constraints on ancillary products clears up, will we see consumption levels in lumber jump? I mean, I think that this is just if we could clear them up all at one time, for sure, right? I mean, what are you guys' thoughts on that?
I don't think everything's going to clear at once, and I think that this is just going to smooth out. I mean, we're at a run rate of like 1.5 million housing starts, and that we're not going to be able to go to 1.7 million or 1.8 million.
That's the run. That's the run rate. Maybe you can explain the run rate a little bit different than the actual starts, right?
Well, I mean that's
completions.
No, the run rate is kind of where we're at right now. There's a seasonally adjusted number that takes into fact, quote unquote, the seasonal constraints that normally exist. And then you can look and you go, hey, the last 3 months we built X number per month. And if we extrapolate that out, that's at, like a 1.5.
Yeah.
So
how about
I mean, on a month-to-month basis, we could be 1.6 or we can be 1.45. But
I still like the fact that James said you were making a major point. I like that.
Well, I'm going to make another point that's related to this, and this is something I'm having these discussions already internally with other people that I trade with in my business. That we've talked about this. Reloads have gotten fuller here over the last 90 days for various reasons. One, maybe people dumped some lumber in there that was expensive that they didn't want to have to deal with, or that could be like they're hiding inventory in a place. Another one, which is the one that I'm more interested in, is that a lot of these jobs that were pent up from, say December of 2020 to June of 2021 started getting bought as the price came down, right? So now once the price of lumber got below $1,000 after it was up around 2,000, when it got down to around 1,000, some of these jobs started getting bought. And now that lumber is actually shipped and sitting in a reload somewhere, and it's now waiting. It's sold. It's ready to go, but because of the delays in other items that I just talked about earlier, the job site delivery is slowed down, right? So there's a lot of lumber sitting in America right now that's sold.
Yeah, for sure.
And it needs to go get consumed somewhere, but it's not being consumed at the rate that we want it to be to keep the wood flowing in a timely manner. That's why there's a lot of reloads that are on embargo right now. And I'm part of this, man. I'm telling you, I'm experiencing this myself. Okay, this is not something I'm just dreaming up here. This is real-time information that I'm experiencing, and I'll tell you, my reaction to it is I don't like it.
Well, the other thing, Matt,
I don't like it at all.
The other thing I'm running into, Matt, is
an interesting point, Matt.
Trucking delays are starting to accentuate. I've got lanes that. We're moving nice and smoothly that now I have to be quoting, for wood I have on the ground, I'm 2-3 weeks out on that wood because I've got so many loads backed up.
Yeah. And the reason why I don't like it is I'm going to be stuck here with, let's say I've got, 3-4 million feet of stuff sold. It's just sitting there. I'm paying interest on it. I'm paying storage charges on it. I could potentially lose some of this stuff in spoilage, right? So what it's telling me is I don't want to take more new business for further out. I don't care how much money you're willing to pay me. I just don't want it because I don't want to sit here and arrive in December with 7-8 million feet of wood that's supposedly sold on the ground. And then something bad happens that I have no control over, or I start losing money based on spoilage of timber. right? I don't want any of those things.
Do you think that's part of what explains why the futures market is carrying such a big premium?
I mean, there is a lot of exposure built into this market right now as we speak, right? There's upside. We have $1,000 upside exposure based on what happened this year, right? So easily you could make the argument that if a guy's willing to take business for 6 months out, he could lose $500, $600, $700, $1,000 based on what's already happened to this industry in the last 12 months. So, I mean, we all operate upon the principle of recency. I mean, that's a major part of what drives the price of any commodity is the idea of recency. And you can look it up what recency means if you're not sure. It just basically means that whatever you've experienced in the most recent time is you expect that to continue on. It's a psychological profile. It just happens. Human beings do it.
So Greg, what's your thought? I agree with that. I just
am impressed that Matt pulled out the word recency.
It's recency. It's recency bias.
I don't know what's a bigger deal, that he got like Matt made a really good point, or that he pulled out recency. I don't know.
He's like got so many gold stars today. He's gonna.
I know. I mean, he's like wowed me today. I'm like,
yeah.
Hey, you know what? I'm an excellent driver. Okay, what are you doing over there? I'm an excellent driver.
So listen. Like, I want to ask Greg a question. I had a couple people call me again this week saying, yeah, I want to buy some of that stuff, but you need to help me get set up in other reloads because my other places are full. And I kind of like, well, you're not the normal buyer that I would expect that from. How did you fill reloads up, right? And I'm like, that's crazy. So, Greg, what was your point of the futures months being so high in the back?
We've been having a discussion for the last couple of weeks about like, wow, this huge premium in the futures, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I think you and I have had some questions going, Jesus, is the contract broken? And we could have a whole separate discussion about that.
I've had people outside the industry call me that are in the financial market saying, hey, we want to figure out how to take advantage of the discrepancy, because all they do is charts and they look at a historical spread and they're like, we want to take this $150, $1,000 out of the market. Can you help us? Right. Multiple calls.
And I mean, we sat there in September, held a big premium, and now here it is expired. It expired, and I mean, it actually, after carrying a premium, it kind of expired right on. It expired right on cash. So absolutely.
Where did it expire today, Greg?
454.40.
454.40. Okay.
Midweek print 460. I'm saying that's and the other thing is open interest is down to this morning. There was only 29 cars. So I look at it and go, hey, well, this is a really efficient market. Not a lot of deliveries. We had convergence at the end. Hey, that's great. Now I look and I say, November is $100 plus $120 above that. Lots of opportunity for basis if you can find places where you can put lumber on the ground, right? So Great opportunity right now. Anybody
I know a few guys that have done that.
You're only limited by your imagination and your money.
Right. Right.
Well, that trucking and reload storage space and time of year.
Legitimately, reload storage space is a major issue in certain markets. No question about it.
So look, we ripped through a lot of things. It's 12:30. Housing. Is there anything new in housing? I know we talked about that a week or two ago. Housing. Was there anything came out this week?
No, we'll get a lot of data starting next week. We'll get housing starts. We get new home sales, existing home sales, pending home sales. All will be out next week. So I didn't look at the exact dates on which ones we'll be able to talk about next week, but we'll have a lot of housing data next week.
I wanted to go through a couple of different species real quick. James, you said find places to put lumber. Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, I got you. Right? No, that's right, James. I mean, we always talk about this. I didn't coin this phrase, but somebody did a few months ago. Phantom lumber, right? We're so used to knowing where the players are. There's so many unique individuals loading up different reloads now, and it's just happening, right? And I think we saw this months ago, heck, 6 months ago, but it's still happening. I'll run through the stuff Greg just talked about. Where Western Spruce went off at on the CME. Matt, is that about where cash is at today? Does that make sense, about the 454 mark, or where's that being quoted at?
I think it's about right. Yeah, I think Greg nailed it there in terms of efficiency. And now the question is, how come November's $130 higher, right? I mean, that's the next question that's going to be resolved over the next 60 days.
Yeah.
And then you can make that same argument on January and May. Why is there no cost of carry for May over January right now? I don't know. That's a mystery to me. Normally there's a $20 or $30 premium in May over January. But hey,
Yeah.
I want to ask another question. This is something that I'm curious what you guys think about. This is did not the federal stipend for unemployment benefits just end?
Yeah, I think
Right. And so do you think that's going to help all of us, in our normal daily lives outside of talking about lumber? But I mean, like, you drive around Chicago and I drive around Portland, and I can guarantee you every single retail store that I drive by, every gas station, every Costco, every shopping mall, every outlet that's open to the public for business has a help wanted sign out, or they could use somebody to help. We have my school that my youngest daughter is going to. They just lost their daycare lady. They're trying to get one of the parents to just volunteer to be a daycare person after school. And they already have lost people to do before the school year even started. They didn't have people to come in and cook on Fridays, right, for hot lunches. So even the schools, and this is a private school, with money, with an endowment, right? It's a private Catholic school. They have money, and they're having trouble hiring just basic needs type stuff. So I'm wondering when labor is going to start meeting, like the demand.
That's a great, Mike. So look at, a buddy of mine, Greg knows him too, opened a big bar restaurant up in a town from here, close to here. He can't find enough people to be servers or cooks or anything. So it's all hands on deck. Everybody has to do anything. And he said, just in the last week, I talked to him. I saw him, talked to him over the weekend. He's starting to get people now kicking the tires, wanting to work, right? But he couldn't find anybody to work. Some of it, pretty good pay. So he, in that case, he needs the help. I know a lot of people need it. Greg, what say you on that one?
Well, Matt started off by saying we weren't going to get into any of the the political correct stuff. I mean, I don't want to go off the reservation here, and get anybody riled up. But there's no question that we've got a lot of issues, as a society, the balance between, having a social safety net and quote unquote taking care of people, and the balance between that, yet still having people that want to work is one that we seem to struggle with.
Well, people want to work when they want to work. You didn't hear the new memo? That's how people like to work now. And then they like to show up when.
Well, I heard that if you don't want to get vaccinated, yeah, that's okay. You can just work from home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, here, the people are starting to offer more money. I see billboards with, hey, we're paying $18 an hour with $1,000 signing bonus to be like working at Taco Bell or something.
Yeah,
So it's like the market is trying to respond by offering a higher starting wage and some benefits.
I
worked on a farm moving pipe and bucking hay for $3.50 an hour, and those days are over. Like my daughter now, she can flip burgers and make $18 an hour. Hey, I mean, that's like $30,000 a year if you're working full time. I mean, it's not horrible money for a.
It was interesting. There's an article in the Wall Street Journal today about how, yes, like low wage earners, their pay is up fairly substantially, but most of that has completely been offset by the inflation. The inflation of the things that everybody has to, my joke is on, CPI is they go, yeah, well, we're going to exclude food and energy, the money, the things you spend all your money on. I mean, if we could take out, we're going to exclude food, energy, beer, and weed, and okay.
And education, education's so cheap now, right? Compared to when we went to school.
Oh, I saw a buddy over the weekend that had triplets, and he goes, "Oh yeah, I've taken them all off to school." And he goes, "I sent one to Vanderbilt and one to here, one to Wake Forest." And I'm like, I looked at him, I go, "Wow, dude."
Yeah, he's probably paying $70,000 a year.
Bill. I hope they all have good scholarships.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool. Well, look at so just go through panels. That seems to have a little traction on it too, because I'm sure a lot of that's going to the home centers. Some of the big mills are talking about making the new rumor out there is one of the big ones in the South is going to switch from like 70-30 commodity to specialty to try to go heavier to the specialty side. And the way I always say about that is I remember when farmers used to raise organic corn because it was a specialty, it got a higher price per bushel. And all of a sudden they all decided if that guy's getting more, I'm going to raise some organic corn. So everybody started raising organic corn. And guess what? It's a commodity now.
Yeah.
So the point is you can produce and make your switches around as much as you want on specialty versus commodity. It's all a commodity at the end of the day.
Right. Well, if you switch your production like that, then you make the specialty into a commodity.
You absolutely do. I've never seen an industry that does such a good job making a better commodity every year. Right. I mean, it's a commodity. Sorry.
Right.
Sorry. It's yours is no more special than anybody else's, even though maybe I can hang a guy from a construction clad off the 20th floor of a New York building and swing like the old commercial, right?
So I want to just before we close today, I want to go back to my beginning. I was inspired by watching Peyton and Eli, and they had Charles Barkley come in, for a little bit of a segment
on the comment section.
Right? No. Brought him onto the screen, and Matt and I would be able to ask a guest some questions about the market. I think we should think about that. I mean, I don't think we want to go with the Ray Lewis, but that's we can talk about it.
Yeah, no, right on. So, hey, look at Matt Beamer, Greg Riley. Thank you. Come to mxlumber.com. And hey, look at if you are one of those big public companies that is interested in materials exchange, you may be better calling us direct and asking us about it, because a lot of the people that you're asking at your company aren't going to want you to know about us. So I'm just going to let you know that what we're doing digitally can sometimes seem like it's a disruption, and it really is, because that's what we feel. If we don't do it, somebody else is going to be successful at it. So you might as well work with us on it. Greg, Matt, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Be together next week, and hopefully this was helpful for everybody. Have a good week.
Thanks for having me.
Later. Take care.